What's going on, guys? Sledgehammer70 here, and it is time to take another drive. And on today's drive, the topic is around the type of cars I have driven or owned. Now, not driven, but just mainly owned. And it kind of spans quite a few vehicles because the topic was brought up in the comments from last week's drive with me, and I actually had to sit down and be like, wow, what cars did I drive? What was it? And even thinking further back, like, what vehicles did my parents drive as a kid, you know, that I influenced by or seen around? And the process and the car types is actually kind of astounding, because it kind of shows that I wasn't really influenced to be a fan of GM at all over the years. I don't know, so we'll get into it here. And sorry, I am commuting to work today. I'm shooting this video just ahead of me traveling, so yeah, there's that. But I'm thinking back as a kid, like the first car that I can remember my parents having, it was an old Datsun blue truck that my dad put the ugliest camper shell on, and it had like the 1980s, like, I don't even know what it's called, that fraggy rag, blue and white, like mop top style carpet in the back. Like, and then I look at my dad at what he looked like at the time, and I'm like, holy cow, if he just had a bag of candy, he probably could have got classified as a pedophile or something. It was terrible. But it was like, it was the 80s, right? You know, that's what everybody looked like. Big old glasses, comb over, weird mustaches. Yeah. So that blue Datsun truck, I remember that truck so vividly. And going into that, my mom drove a silver, I don't even remember what kind of car it was, but it was like a silver, really inexpensive, like probably the equivalent of like today's Honda Civic, for our family car. And they had those cars forever. And it wasn't until we moved from Santa Ana to Temecula that my mom and dad had purchased a Lincoln Town Car. I don't remember what year. It was definitely early 90s style Lincoln Town Car. And God, what was it? Was it a Dodge? I think it was a Dodge Caravan, if I'm not mistaken. And so we had the van and the Lincoln, and from there, God, what was the next cars? I think it was my dad's truck. He got a GMC Sonoma. It was one of the first ones in the area when those came out. And then he had upgraded from that truck to a Dodge Dakota when they came out with the new body style that, looking back now, I don't think anybody agrees that was a good body style. Everyone loved them at the time, but yeah, no, it was not a pretty sight. But after that, I mean, my mom had like Camrys and what was the other one? A Prism. That was, yes, which actually coincidentally became my first car ever. Toyota Prism, or Geo Prism, sorry. And underneath the hood, it literally had all Toyota parts, like all the pipings, the tubings. I mean, it was, for all intents and purposes, it was basically a Corolla with a Geo tag on it. And yeah, I mean, that was the first car that I had access to. That was also the first car I learned to drive on. And it was an automatic at that time. It wasn't until a couple years later, when I had my first job, that I learned how to drive a stick shift. And it would just so happen to be, coincidentally, I was out in the field. I worked in landscape at the time, and I had driven a truck out there, which was an automatic. It was an old Toyota beat up, like, work truck. And my boss had left up another old beat up Toyota work truck that was a stick, but he took mine. And I get back in the truck thinking, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I get in there, I'm like, how do you do this? Called him up on the radio. This was back when you had the push dock radios, you know, our phone radios. And he's like, well, you got a big parking lot there. Figure out how to drive it. I didn't have no YouTube videos. I didn't have anybody teaching me how to do it. I called my dad up real quick, and I mean, I was young. I mean, I was still very early in my driving career. I was like, Dad, so this stick stuff, how do you do it? That was an interesting day. And I learned how to drive a stick. From then on, I knew how to drive, and that was the most, like, one, it was an old school Toyota beat up truck, but two, I don't know, like, and I'm sure any of you guys out there that have driven sticks before, it's like, not only was it my first time, I was having to drive in pretty heavy traffic in Southern California, and good God, it felt like everyone was touching my bumper. And like every stop sign was on an uphill. I swear to God, like it was the most traumatizing drive home I can recall. And I did really good. The truck didn't roll back at all. I did stall like 2 or 3 times. Those fun moments in life. But yeah, that was the time that I got my license and how to drive a stick. I think I was 18, 17? I mean, I was still pretty old. At that time, my parents didn't have any stick shift vehicles, so, and before that, I think the last stick that my dad drove that I would have been allowed to drive or even touch, but there's no way. I was like 12, you know, like at that time, like, people didn't let their young kids drive. We didn't live out in the country where you can get away with it. But anyways, so after my Geo Prism, I went to college out in Arizona, and I was in a pretty major car accident. And in a sense, it wasn't my fault. And I know this story is going to sound slightly crazy, but I'm driving down, I believe it's the 101 freeway in Phoenix, basically the freeway that loops around. And a lady, well, I didn't know it was a lady at the time, but I'm driving on the freeway. It's probably like 11:30 at night. I had worked at In-N-Out Burger out in Scottsdale, and I was driving back home to downtown Phoenix, you know, after a shift. And I'm like the only car on the freeway. I'm in the fast lane. I know specifically the time frame. Linkin Park's new album, God, was it Meteor? I don't remember. I remember listening to the song, and to this day, listening to that album, if it ever pops up or comes on, it reminds me of these. But listen to that, driving to the freeway. I'm in cruise control in the Geo Prism, driving probably, I think I'm going 65. That was the speed limit. I probably was going 2 or 3 miles over the speed limit. And I look at my rearview mirror, and I mean, the freeway like wrapped around. It was kind of crazy. And I see this car flying. Like you could tell when a car coming up from behind you is driving really fast. And I mean, this car's like a mile if so away, but I mean, those lights are coming up fast. And I was like, holy crap, that's like a cop car booking it. It has to be. And the car's getting closer and closer, and I'm like, holy crap, that car's in my lane. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, should I change lanes, whatever? I'm like, no, I'll just hold my course. I'm going over the speed limit. Like, they'll change lanes if they want to get over. And it, like, I'm literally like real time. I'm looking at my rearview mirror going like, what the hell? This car's not changing lanes. And all of a sudden, I mean, the car's probably 2 car lengths away from the back of me, and I'm just like, what do you do? And all of a sudden, the car changes lanes like as fast or sporadically as you can think of. And all I remember is looking over, seeing headlights going by me out my passenger window sideways. She had changed lanes and tossed her car sideways and counteracting. And all I remember from that point is I heard what at least what the cop told me it probably was her tires catching, and she just T-boned me right into the middle of the median. And the medians there are like big metal stanchion wires that are pulled taut, and then when the car hits, it lets free, but it absorbs the impact. Well, I hit those, the wires went free, and then she hit me again, pushing my car up over the metal wires, and she was pushing me, and those metal poles were literally slicing my car in half behind my seat. But yeah, crazy. So that whole accident led me to buy my first Chevy truck. So I bought a Chevy S10, and bad timing, but I bought it on actual 9/11. I had my accident was done. My rental car was gonna expire in 2 days, and no car dealerships out in Arizona would sell me a car. I mean, I was a young kid, I had no credit, I didn't really have any money to put down. My accident and stuff was still within legal battles and whatnot, so there wasn't any payout or anything like that, and I had to get a new car. And so I ended up driving home, and shockingly, I went to Paradise Chevrolet, where I bought this Camaro, and bought my first used Chevy S10. It was a single cab truck, and the biggest influence there was a lot of my buddies all drove S10s, and they were on bags. I was never planning on putting it on bag, but I really loved the way that truck looked lowered. So picked one of those up, drove it for years. I love that truck. I mean, the only downside was I'm a giant, and I never should have brought a single cab truck because I just didn't fit. But that truck lasted me a lot of years, and even through getting married. So I got married, had the S10 truck, and I always had a desire to buy a really nice car, but at the time, I mean, I wasn't really making enough money to do much, and cars were the last thing on my mind outside of like my truck. I mean, I lowered it, I put a system in it, I did all that kind of stuff, but there really wasn't much you could do to a 4-cylinder S10. So after that truck, what did we get? Oh, I think that was when I got my Dodge Caliber SRT4. For some reason, I go back and I look at that car and I'm like, why did I ever buy that car? The thing was ugly as sin. I thought it was the coolest thing since sliced bread. Got rid of that car after I leased that car. And my wife at that time, we had gotten her a VW Passat. So that was the secondary car. It was the turbo one. I want to say it was a 2003. I'm probably totally off on that, but that car was awesome. The motor on that thing, amazing. The downside of that car, it literally melted wax out of the doors in the hot California summers. But going from that car, where did we get next? I think it was the Jetta. So my wife got a Jetta. We traded in my Caliber, and that was when we became a one-car family. And from there, we had a couple kids. My wife was driving me to work every morning. It was crazy. Would never recommend it. But I mean, we did what we had to do at that time. You know, it was during the recession. We had unfortunately lost our house. For those of you who watched my last Lethal Hammer channel, I kind of mentioned that before. I mean, my wife was working, I was working. We had our first child, and Kyle, and we had that car through Luke, even little old Jetta. And then we traded the Jetta in and got a Dodge Durango. The first year the new body style came out. What was that, 2011, 2012 range, around that time. And oh, you know, I totally skipped a car. Let me go back. So after I had the Geo Prism, or actually during the time period of the Geo Prism, so I had to share the car with my older sisters. I had gotten a 69 Z28 Camaro, and how did I forget that? Holy crap. I had gotten a 69 Z28 Camaro, and I only had it for, God, weeks, if that, not very long. Mainly because it was sold to me. I took it down to have work done on it, and a Camaro collector had stumbled upon it in the shop and realized what it was, and I had no idea, and bought it off me for a ridiculous amount more money than what I paid for it. And that car came and went faster than I ever wanted to. I was an idiot. I should have kept that car, but I didn't. So, but the Geo Prism ended up being mine, and then I went off to college. So, sorry, backtracking there. But we got the Dodge Durango for my bride and our kids and myself, still single car family. And then it wasn't until we moved back, we were up in Thousand Oaks at the time. And I had, during all this time, I wanted my own car. I wanted a Camaro. The 5th gens had rolled out. There was a moment when those 5th gens were out. We were driving the Jetta, that I'm like, okay, babe, let's get one. And it just, finances and money just didn't make sense. Like, we made enough money, but it was like, why have a second car when we don't need it. And then on top of that, you know, the ramifications of, oh, we'd have a second car payment, second insurance payment, and just the maintenance style of stuff, and not be able to put as much money in savings, which, you know, trying to be responsible in life, you know, we made the decision to hold off until we were in a better position. So 2013 rolls along, we're in a better position, we need the second car. Unfortunately, not as good as a position as I wished or wanted us to be in. So I ended up getting the 2013 Camaro 1LT RS, which was my, I'm like, at least let me get a Camaro, babe, instead of having to drive like a Civic or something like that. I mean, they got basically the same kind of gas mileage, and she agreed and let me do some stuff to the car and had a good time with it. And you know, in the meantime, we had gotten her newer Dodge Durango. We really loved the Durango, but now we're at a point where we're realizing, as much as the Durango is an awesome family car, it's an awesome family car when you have young kids. Our kids are starting to grow up, and we're starting to realize there's not as much space in the Durango as you need for a family of 6, you know, 4 boys plus the adults. And so now we're saving our pennies and looking at the ability to either get a Suburban. Well, basically we're looking at a Suburban, becoming the typical American family. So it'd be amazing to be able to get a Suburban, just because of how much easier it would be with travel, and then especially on vacations and stuff, just a lot more room in the vehicles across the board. And then obviously I ordered and purchased my new 2016 Camaro 2SS. Now, if you look back, I haven't really owned that many Chevy cars, and definitely I have not owned sports cars. I mean, the V6 Camaro, okay, yeah, it's a muscle car per se, but it was a V6. That was my first foray. I mean, I was always the magazine car enthusiast at that time. My neighbors were the ones that had the nice cars, and I'd go over and help them out. And I was just, for many years, I was never in the position where, you know, I made a lot of money to go just out and buy this stuff. Like, I'm amazed at how young I see some people be able to afford some of these cars. And I made the conscious decision to get married and have kids, and probably could have had nicer vehicles early on, but, you know, I made the decision to start a family, and that was more important to me than a high-end car. So, and even then, when I say high-end, it's way more expensive than I was able to afford. You know, not like supercars or Ferraris and stuff like that. So, but you know, I'm blessed. Like, my work career has done, I like to think, fairly well. I love my job. I get to do some amazing things and work with amazing people, some of the most talented people in the industry. And it's allowed me to save money here and there and be able to afford this car. And yeah, it's not like I've had this history of crazy vehicles and wrenching on things like crazy. I mean, I'll be honest about that, but I have helped work on cars. I have done stuff over the years that kept me a car enthusiast. You know, like, I was that magazine warrior for years, always having my Hot Rod magazine subscription up and waiting for the new guides for the new cars of Car and Driver and Motor Trend and all that. Like, I mean, man, I've just, like, the Dodge Viper for many years, and even still to this day, has been my most favorite car. You guys throw me under the bus all you want about that, but I just, something about that Dodge Viper over the years I had just loved. Like, I was tempted to go find like a 1989 Dodge Viper for, like, you can get them for like 25, 30 grand, just to have a Viper. But again, it's a lot of money for a secondary car that I can't afford. But yeah, that's my history of cars. Again, it's not a glamorous one, sorry, but you know, I've gone through life slowly chipping away at the ranks and moving up and trying to make a little bit more money here and there, and, you know, being able to afford the things I can. You know, it takes time. And for any of you guys out there who are just like, hey, I'm 18, 19, and I want to get a new Camaro, like, take your time. It's, have dreams, save your pennies. I know I did, and I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm living.
C91 dangerous road conditions.
I don't want to say I'm living proof of it, but you know, if you save your money and be patient, you can ultimately get the things that you want. And sometimes it might take longer than other times, and I'm very blessed, and I'm very thankful for the things I've been able to afford and what has been blessed to me, you know, to steward and watch over in life. So yeah, that's my vlog. Super long, I think. How long is this bad boy? 20 minutes. But yeah, you can see I'm in slow traffic. Well, it's not super slow. I'm at least moving, so that's always good. But yeah. So for those of you watching the video and have made it this far, let me know what kind of cars you've owned. I'm sure, I know there's a wide range of ages, and some of you guys have been able to experience a lot more cars than I have. Luckily, I've grown up around a family who has owned a lot of really nice cars. My uncles had all the high-end Corvettes. My other uncle had just about every Porsche high-end, whatever you can think of, Acuras, Vipers, GTS Coupes, ACSs. But yeah, the Acura NSX, that was awesome. One of my uncle had a really nice one. Actually, he has the yellow Viper that I did a video on. But yeah, I mean, I've been able to see a lot of really cool cars, and haven't been able to own that many yet. So my ultimate goal, you know, potentially get a ZL1 one day. The even bigger ultimate goal, rebuild the 1969 and have a good time with it, and go from there. So, but guys, thanks for watching the video. Let me know below what cars you've had. You know, good, bad, ugly. I don't care if you're super young and it's your first car. Let me know what car you're driving. I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching the video and supporting the channel. Likes, comments, shares, always appreciated. I posted some links above. I did a video on my old 2013 Camaro 1LT RS. If you guys haven't seen that, check it out in the upper right hand corner. And until next time, guys, I will see you on the road.